Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Zion Pickerington. We're so glad that you're here. First off, let me take the time to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend the time with us, because as a staff, we truly do appreciate that. Let me talk a little bit about myself. My name is Hal Richard. I am the community pastor here along with my wife, Janice. We've been here for quite a few years now. When Josh approached us as a staff to kind of step out of our comfort zone and do one of these, I remember inside my brain is going, no, 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 no. And that still small voice inside of me is going, we got this. And I remember answering Josh going, yeah, I can do that. And getting in the car with my wife going, what did I do to myself? Because for me, I'm always in the background. I don't have any problem being in the background. Whatever needs to get done, I get done. And to give you a good idea of where I am when it comes to standing in front of people, as I went through college a couple eons ago, I was in my last semester, had all my classes registered, and I get a call from the guidance counselor that I need to come in. So I came into her office and I sat down and she goes, Hal, you're not going to graduate. And I went, what do you mean? I got like 25 extra hours. And she says, you haven't taken speech. And I went, well, let's just pick one of these and sub it for speech, because I really don't want to do speech. And she said, we can't do that. You must take speech in order to graduate. So God was gracious. He put me in a class with about 12 people. And about 2 weeks in the springtime in Ohio, we have tornadoes. There were some pretty serious tornadoes in southern Ohio and a couple in northeastern Ohio. I was in the military at the time, in the Guard. I got pulled out for 3 weeks up in Niles, Ohio, to run security for that city because their police department, the building had been wiped out and their staff was busy with everything else, because the tornado took about a half mile of the city out, half-mile wide swath out. I came back released with a letter from my Guard unit on a Sunday. Walked in Monday to campus, and I had to meet with each one of my professors to see what I needed to do to complete, because that was the final week. Well, as I'm walking through meeting with each one of them, I remember walking into Rita Boving, who was my speech teacher, and I walked in and I said, what do I need to do? And she looked at me and said, at the moment, you have a D. She said, if you show up tomorrow, our last class, and give a speech, I'll give you a C. And I looked at her and said, if I don't, she said, it's a D. I said, bye, and walked out the door. Don't? She said, it's a D. I said, because that was where I was at. But it's interesting how God takes us and tweaks us and adjusts us as we in Him. As I prayed about what to talk about today, one of the things that kept hitting me was wisdom. And as we go through this past year and just even the last 3 or 4 months since the election, and just the craziness that it's become in this country, I mean, we really need to focus on living a wisdom-centered life from a wisdom-centered view. And I mean, with all the technical advances that we have today, I mean, I get 35 junk emails an hour. I mean, we have all this stuff that bombards us, but it tends to draw us to a world-centered view, not a Christ-centered view. So I want to talk about wisdom today, and I want to open with some scripture from Proverbs 8, 22 to 30, and it talks about wisdom. In the beginning, I was there, for God possessed me even before He created the universe. From eternity past, I was set in place. Before the world began, I was anointed from the beginning. Before the ocean depths were poured out, and before there were any glorious fountains overflowing with water, I was there dancing. Even before one mountain had been sculptured or one hill raised up, I was already there dancing. When He created the earth, the fields, even the first atom of dust, I was already there. When He hung the tapestry of the heavens and stretched out the horizons of the earth, when the cloud and the skies were set in place, and the subterranean fountains began to flow strong, I was already there. When He set in place the pillars of the earth and spoke the decrees of the seas, commanding the waves so that they wouldn't overstep their boundaries, I was there. Close to the Creator's side as his master's artist. Daily he was filled with delight in me as I playfully rejoiced before him. I laughed and played, so happy with what he had made, while finding my delight in the children of men. And as I looked at that, we see God all around us. I mean, through nature, through sunrise, sunset. I mean, everyone's different. I mean, when you look at the mountains, the trees, the farmers' fields, and a lot of the words, you know, and in this craziness that we've become recently, a lot of prophetic words. And I'm reading them, and, you know, you're back and forth going, well, you know, I like that. And then you get one, we got one and I looked at it and I went, now that is a good word. I got it from a friend of mine, and I'm really pondering it. And about 30 minutes later, he sends me the bio of the guy that created that word. And it was kind of comical because about 6 years ago, the guy was talking about aliens and his wife that was an alien and the kids that they had together. And I went, ooh, that's not a good word anymore. And it really came down to, as I talked with God, going, okay, what's the difference here? He said, it's the soil that it was planted in. And it's interesting because I just picked up a book called Becoming a King by Morgan. And go over the past 20 years as I've been back and forth to Wild at Heart retreats. And I remember seeing him the first time, and he was a young kid in the background. He was just running all the errands. And now when you go out to one of those, he's one of the main speakers because he understood what good soil was. In one of the lectures, he talks about that. And so I wanted to cover some of that today. And the first one he talks about, the first habit he talks about is understanding that there are no shortcuts with God. When you look at Joseph, I mean, here he was. He went from a well into slavery to prison, thought he was out of prison, but wait, 2 more years to grow before God brought him out of that. You look at Daniel praying, and Michael, the angel, was coming, but had to fight for 3 weeks to get there. You look at Jacob, 7 years he worked for Laban to get his wife, and then Laban tricked him, and he had to work another 7 years. And it's a function of they had to grow. We have given ways as a culture to so many shortcuts. When you look at life and reality, we've given into shortcuts on our marriage, in our work. You look at health and fitness, you know, all these different machines to make it quicker, better, faster, easier. Finances, and not to mention the spiritual life. Matthew 7 in the Message, 13 and 14, Jesus said it so plainly. Don't look for shortcuts to God. The market is flooded with surefire, easygoing formulas for a successful life that can be practiced in your spare time. Don't fall for that stuff, even though crowds of people do. And I mean, we have got to step back and really reevaluate, you know, what it really means. I wrote down in my notes here, 2007, there was a song that came out. I believe it was sung by Wendy and Mary Rice, I believe, but it was called Instant Christian. And I remember sitting there with my wife at the time, and we were laughing at the song because you had the microwave, you had a few cell phones, and you look at that today, and it's just mind-boggling to me. But the last stanza in that song went, instant Christian, changed overnight. Anything easy, because that's what we like. Help me grow, Lord. Show me how. Give me the patience. I want it now. And I mean, there aren't any shortcuts. We have to walk through what God has us to walk through in order to become what we become. The second one in Morgan's book is embrace failure. And I think Mike Tyson probably said it the best, because he said everyone he fought had a plan until he punched him in the face. Then a lot of them just quit. And I mean, that is so true when you look around. Most of us are pushing until we get hit, and then we fall down, and it's like, okay, I'm not going to get back up. We need to learn how to pick ourselves up, dust ourselves off, and start again. I mean, and learn to fall forward, because you're 2 foot closer to where you're trying to be anyway, if you do that at least. One of the other things that Morgan talked about, which I thought was pretty neat, was he talked about Teddy Roosevelt's speech back in 1910 called The Man in the Arena. And I don't know how many times I've read this. Actually, we talked about this about 6 months ago in our office at work, just kind of bantering things around. But let me read it to you. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives, comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcomings. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotion, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. As I think about failure, I think of the very first time my wife and I went skiing. We were not married yet. We flew out to Colorado and stayed with a good Christian friend of her brother's. And I remember going out to the ski slopes. I'd skied a couple times here in Ohio, in northern Ohio, where it took you 20 seconds to get pulled up to come down in like 10 seconds. It was a very little hill. Well, I went out there with Janice. Janice was a pretty good skier already. And she signed me up for lessons that first day. And I was 25, I think, at the time. And I'm in this lesson, and I'm looking around, and there isn't anybody within 10 years of my age in the class, probably more like 15. And I did that class all morning, and I just struggled. And we met for lunch, and I looked at her and I said, look, I got to do it my way. I'm going to the top of the hill with you, which was a mountain out there. And I remember I said, just take me down an easy slope. And we started down an easy slope, and it was just zip, boom, zip, boom, zip, boom, zip, boom. But I was learning. Each time I failed, I learned how not to do what I had just done. And as the week progressed, I remember we were skiing, and these young kids were jumping off of. I was probably a 1 foot high little jump they were jumping off of. And I remember thinking, I'm going to do that. And I told her, I said, I'm going to do that. And she goes, I wouldn't try that as good as I can ski. And I'm crazy at times. So I went down the first time, and I mistimed the jump. So I didn't get in the air. And she goes, well, that's good. Quit. And I want to do it once more. So as a good guy, I went back up. I'm going to show off. Man, I hit it perfect. I got great lift. I'm feeling good until one of the skis fall off. And I can't land on one ski. So needless to say, I tumbled in a pile in front of her. But it's that you have to learn how to dare greatly in order to grow. And you'll learn out of your failures much more than you will if you stay where you're at and you're not willing to risk. Because if you don't risk, you become like a pond. You just become stagnant. You have to step out and risk. So, when you look at that from a biblical perspective and good soil perspective, where are you daring greatly? Are you risking enough to have failures? Are you risking enough so that God has to show up? Failure is one of the greatest teachers if you're willing to dare greatly. Because it's really not the prize at the end of the journey. It's what you become in the process. As you grow and mature and you learn in that process, you become something better every time you fail. You want to live in today, but measure by the decade. Don't look at, I failed today, because if you look at it over 10 years, yeah, you failed, but over 10 years, you've become so much greater. And your successes are really not the measure. The increasing risk and learning from your failures are really where you increase and grow out of. And the next thing Morgan talks about in his book is choosing the lowest seat. And the world says build, get out in front, and stay there. Climb that ladder. It's your best chance to exalt yourself. And I mean, this last couple weeks, at least for me, I mean, I've looked at some of these 30-something billionaires and some of the decisions they are making right now, and it's like they don't have the wisdom to be making those decisions, but they have the power because of what they've become in the moment. And it's like, I don't think they understand what they're really doing to the freedoms in this country that so many people fought and truly died for. The kingdom suggests a much better way. In Luke chapter 14, verse 7. When Jesus noticed how the guests for the meal were all vying for the seats of honor, he shared this story with the guests around the table. When you're invited to an important social function, don't be quick to sit near the head of the table choosing the seat of honor. What will happen when someone more distinguished than you arrives? The host will then bring him over to where you are sitting and ask for your seat, saying in front of all the guests, "You're in the wrong place. Please give this person your seat." Disgraced, you will have to take whatever seat is left. Instead, when you're invited to a banquet, you should choose to sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes and sees you there, he may say, "My friend, come with me. Let me seat you in a better place." Then in front of all the other guests at the banquet, you will be honored and seated in the place of highest respect. Remember this: everyone with a lofty opinion of who he is and who seeks to raise himself up will be humbled before all. And everyone with a modest opinion of who he is and chooses to humble himself will be raised up before all. I mean, from my perspective, I have learned that I always take the lowest seat, and unless God tells me something different, that's where I'm going to sit. And over the years, it's proven very well for me, because it's out of that seat, along with the integrity with what we're doing, that God can now take and mature us and then use us. One of the other things that I heard years ago that really stuck with me is, if you build it by yourself, then you must maintain it by yourself. And that alone can wipe you out. If you allow God to build it, he's going to maintain it. And you just live in it, and life is amazing. The next thing Morgan talks about in his book is living in the present moment. And for me, that was, and still is even today, one of my biggest challenges. I'm very focused on goal-oriented. What do I need to get done? I need to get firewood. I need to do this. I need to do that. And so I tend not to slow down. And I can literally choke God out with the busyness of my life and what I have going on. And I don't even slow down to spend time to read, spend time to pray. Because, I mean, I'm busy, busy, busy. I mean, it's just, and I mean, looking back over some of the different things going on with my kids and different things, I look back now and I don't remember going, the kids who asked me about a sporting event or something they were involved in at school, and I was there, but I wasn't. My mind, my mind was on, what do I need to get, my mind done when I get out of here. I couldn't. Like I said, I've learned, for me now, it's slow down, take a deep breath, and just, okay, let me feel myself breathing. Okay, God, what do I need to do here? I mean, sometimes for me, it's, I get home at the end of being out on a project somewhere at work, and just sitting in the car for that minute going, okay, God, just let me lay everything down that I've dealt with all day. What do I need to hear from you right now? What are you saying in this time? And the other thing I love to do is, I'm a hunter, so I can go down and sit in the tree stand. Now, I hunt, but I don't hunt anymore. I'll watch more go by anymore, I think, than I'll shoot, just because I don't know, I think as you go older, sometimes you get that way. But I can go sit in a tree stand for 6 hours and spend that time with God and just looking around at all the things He's created, watching the squirrels run around. And yet, if I get back up to the house, I can't do that. Okay, I need this, I need that, So we really need to learn to live in the present moment. What's going on right now? What's important now? The other thing Morgan talks about is speed of soul. And when we're busy, the Father appears quiet. It's not that He's quiet. It's that we're really too busy to listen or even hear. And all too often, it's the good things that take us out. We were designed to walk in the garden in relationship with Him. I mean, we get distracted. I mean, even as I'm up here doing this, my iPad's going off 3 times because I've gotten emails or something. And it's like you get distracted, but all that stuff is instant. And yet, is it what we really need in the moment? I mean, there is no intimacy in hurriedness. I mean, there just isn't. And if you're married and you think there is, ask your spouse what they think. You might be surprised. But I think as a nation and as a culture, we've become uncomfortable with silence and stillness and solitude because we want everything instant. Instant Christian, instant coffee. I mean, we want to throw the leftovers in the microwave so we can eat in the next 2 minutes. And then we're just, the other thing, I think we're overloaded with commitments. I mean, I look back raising 4 kids, and three of the 4 were pretty close in age. And I remember I'd be going north of Columbus to Mount Vernon to watch one child while she was in Lancaster, and we just went like this constantly every night. And it's those commitments like kids' sports and activities, relationships, life. We can't slow down because we don't know what to do if we're not busy. I mean, we don't know what to do with that. We want it in an instant, and when God doesn't show up in that instant, we think He's not coming through. And that's really not true. What we really need to do is to slow down, see what God's doing. We have to remember we were designed for a relationship. And true and real relationship take time, and quite honestly, more time. We need to slow down and build a few deep relationships with people that are walking alongside of us that we can bounce things off of because we know they have our heart. Actually slow down and read a few books deeply. Actually read the book. Don't just speed through it going, yep, I read that one. Which one you got for me next? And I think the other thing we need to do is really slow down and focus. What's He calling you to? Let go of the good for what is truly the best. I'm gonna try and wrap this up. Like I said, a little bit out of my comfort zone, but God still got it. So we're going to continue to run. And I want to bring this to a close talking about soil, because if we pick up on these 5 habits and we practice them, we can become good soil. Consider this. There was a farmer who went out to sow seeds. As he cast his seeds, some fell along the beaten path, and the birds came and ate them. Other seeds fell into gravel that had no topsoil. The seeds quickly shot up, but when the graze grew hot, we're not going to get that word out today. But when the days grew hot, the sprouts were scorched and withered because they had insufficient roots. Other seeds fell among the thorns and weeds, so that when the seeds sprouted, so did the weeds, crowding out the good plants. But other seeds fell on good, rich soil that kept producing a good harvest. Some yielded 30, 60, even 100 times as much as if he planted. And I think when you really look at that, I mean, I've heard it preached over and over and over that these are, different people. But in reality, I think it's each and every one of us. I mean, at some point in time. I mean, when you look at the hardened ground, I mean, there's trauma, we're walking wounded, someone said something before service, and you're walking wounded, and you don't even really hear the word that's being given that day, and the seed can't stick. It just can't. Or you look at the shallow ground, and it's that immature and shortcuts. There's a message that you need to grow from, but because of your immaturity and wanting to shortcut, it just doesn't stick. It may start, but then you go, it's not for me. Let's go something different. When you look at the third type, I would call that cluttered. We get distracted with the busyness of life, the worries of life. I mean, there's something going on. And I mean, that happens to all of us. Right now, I'm dealing with one parent in a nursing home, one in a hospital. That happens to all of us. It's like, okay, God, what do I do with each one of these and continue to bring it forward? And then there is that good soil where we hear and obey, and coming out of that is where we get a bumper crop. And that's where we go back to, if we take these 5 habits and start applying them into our daily life, we're going to get a bumper crop, and we're going to grow in wisdom and stature, because God can put things in. They're going to grow and mature, and as the first things grow and mature, he plants more, and we just continue to grow in all of that. And let me close in prayer, and we'll kind of go from there next. Papa God, Papa, we just love and adore you, Papa, and we just thank you so much for your word, Papa, and how it affects each one of us, Papa. We thank you for who you are and what you stand for, Papa, and how you came after each one of us, Papa. Each one of us individually you were looking for, because you knew we could become good soil and you could use us. Papa, as we move forward throughout this next year and the changes that are going to come, because they're going to come, Papa, we just ask that we could take and apply these things to our lives, Papa, to where we can become good soil, so that we can do more and more for you, bring more and more into the kingdom. Papa, we just give you all the praise, all the honor, and all the glory for it. In Christ's name, amen.